Data can be passed through to an API via various means, for example via query string parameters or via the request body. We can apply binding source attributes to our action parameters on our controller actions to tell ASP.NET Core where a certain value should come from. Multiple such attributes exist. We can use the FromBody attribute, stating that the value should come from the request body. FromForm, stating that the form data is in the request body. FromHeader states that the data is coming from the request header. FromQuery states that it's coming from the query string parameter list. FromRoute states that it's coming from the route data from the current request. And FromServices tells us that the data is coming from the request service, which is injected as an action parameter. For an API as ours, the ones that are most useful are FromBody, FromHeader, FromQuery, and FromRoute. For example, we could change our getCity action by explicitly stating that the city ID is coming from the route. Yet, even though we haven't used a binding source attribute like this when getting a city, our code still worked. By default, the ASP.NET Core runtime attempts to use the complex object model binder in that case, which pulls data from value providers in a defined order. In our case, however, we are using the API controller attribute. The API controller attribute changes the rules a bit to better fit API development. When using that attribute, FromBody is inferred for complex type parameters. A good example would be adding a point of interest, which we'll immediately tackle. Types with special meanings like cancellation token, iForm collection, etc. are ignored. FromForm is inferred for action parameters of type iForm file and iForm file collection. It's not inferred for any simple or user-defined types. We won't use this one in our API. FromRoute is inferred for any action parameter name matching a parameter in the route template. When more than one route matches an action parameter, any route value is considered to be coming from route. Lastly, FromQuery is inferred for any other action parameters. These rules save us from having to identify binding sources manually by applying attributes to the action parameters. When the default behavior needs to be overridden, binding source attributes can still be applied. Let's continue with creating a resource.